All right, ready for an adventure. Today we're ditching the tourist traps and grabbing our cameras as we journey through the wilds of Belarus.
And we've got the perfect guides, Slava and Alex. These photographers are practically synonymous with Belarusian landscape photography.
Yeah, and what I love about this deep dive is we're not just seeing their stunning photos, we're hearing the stories behind those photos.
Right, it's like they're letting us in on their secrets, the challenges, the mishaps, the moments they almost missed the shot.
It's about understanding their process, their vision, right? And speaking of vision, you mentioned Slava actually struggled with landscapes early in his career, unexpected for a landscape photographer.
It really just goes to show that even seasoned pros don't start out as experts in every genre. For Slava, it was aerial photography, especially wildlife, where he really hit his stride. He talks about how seeing animals from above gives him this whole other perspective, one you just can't get from ground level.
Which makes his partnership with Alex even more fascinating. So while Slava's soaring above with his drones, Alex is the master of ground-level composition. I mean, talk about dedication. He scouts locations multiple times, sometimes to get the perfect light, the perfect angle.
It reminded me of that story he told about the lumberjacks in Naliboki Forest. They were completely baffled, like why would he drive all the way from Minsk to photograph animals they see every day? They thought he could find them in his backyard.
It just goes to show the level of artistry and dedication they bring. They're not just snapping pictures, they're pursuing a specific vision.
Absolutely.
And speaking of pursuits, their first meeting was a bit of a chase in itself. Slava apparently kept oversleeping.
5 times, if you can believe it. I guess the life of a photographer isn't always 9 to 5. But once they finally did connect, you can really see that shared passion for documenting Belarus shine through.
So let's follow their lead and kick off our virtual tour, shall we? First stop, the village of Kaptaruni. This place sounds like something out of a fairy tale. It's nestled near the Lithuanian border with these restored aristocratic estate houses, all owned by, get this, a Belarusian writer.
See, this is what I love about Slava. He's drawn to the unique, the unexpected. It's not just about a pretty picture, it's about finding the story within the landscape.
And speaking of stories, they had quite the adventure here.
Oh.
Let's just say it involved a moose and nearly ending up in another country.
Waist-deep snow, freezing temperatures. They've been trudging through this for an hour when they realized they'd gone in the wrong direction. The moose was long gone, and they were practically on the doorstep of Lithuania.
Talk about dedication. But that seems to be a recurring theme for them, like their experience at Yelnya Bog. Now, this place is something else entirely. It's one of the largest raised bogs in all of Europe.
And this is where understanding the landscape just adds another layer. This kind of bog, it forms over thousands of years from decomposing moss. It creates this incredibly unique ecosystem, one you won't just find anywhere in Belarus.
Slava was in awe. But he mentioned not all his friends shared his enthusiasm.
Well, yeah, it challenges our preconceived notions of beauty. It's wild, untamed, even a bit eerie, if you ask me. He even told a story about getting lost in there with a guide. Imagine that, getting turned around in a place that seems almost timeless.
And of course, no adventure would be complete without a little tech mishap.
Oh, this one's a classic. Alex learned the hard way about securing his belongings when his phone took a dip in the bog.
A soggy reminder to stay connected to your gear, that is.
So we've gone from the tranquility of Kaptaruni to the wild beauty of Yelnya Bog. And now our virtual tour takes us to Lake Usaja. This is where we see a different side to Slava, a bit more meticulous.
Oh, absolutely. This is where technology really becomes a photographer's best friend. He spent hours, and I mean hours, on Google Maps searching for a heart-shaped island he'd heard rumors about.
And he found it. He found it. It's a testament to how pre-visualization, even with something as simple as Google Maps, can lead to these incredibly unique compositions.
It's like the perfect blend of chance and very deliberate planning. But all right, enough with the landscapes for now, because up next we're going deep into Naliboki Forest. And let me tell you, things are about to get wild.
Welcome back to our photographic journey through Belarus. We've wandered through charming villages, braved the untamed beauty of a raised bog, and now we're about to dive into a whole new dimension of Belarusian landscape. It's rivers.
As I was going through Slava and Alex's photos, I was struck by just how often water features in their work. Rivers, lakes, even flooded fields. It's like this whole other side to Belarus we don't always picture.
Absolutely, and rivers especially, they hold this deeper significance, don't they? Always changing, shaping the land, the lives of the people who live alongside them. It makes sense that both Slava and Alex feel such a strong connection to them.
Let's start with the Byrazina River, a place that seems deeply etched in Alex's memory. He talks about spending his childhood there, really experiencing it, foraging, fishing, becoming part of the landscape.
It's a reminder that our connection to nature is often rooted in those early experiences, those formative years. But the Biorazina isn't just idyllic childhood memories for Alex. Anyone who's encountered its mosquito population knows it's got a wild side too.
He actually calls it out as one of the top 3 mosquito hotspots in Belarus. I can only imagine. But even those mosquitoes pale in comparison to his story about camping there and having a close encounter with wild boars.
Right. Alone, in the dark, and suddenly you hear those guttural grunts right outside your tent. It's a reminder that even in seemingly familiar places, nature always has a way of reminding us who's boss.
Gives me chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But even with the mosquitoes and the boars, Alex manages to capture this incredible beauty in the Biarina. There's a sunset photo of his with the river reflecting this fiery sky. It's just breathtaking.
He's got a real knack for finding those moments of tranquility, even in challenging situations. But let's move on to the Neomin River. Now, this one holds a special place in both photographers' hearts.
Yeah, for Alex, it's almost like his muse. He's constantly drawn back to it, especially at dawn, capturing those magical moments when the light hits the mist just right. He even says he rarely feels the need to photograph anywhere else.
It speaks to the importance of finding those places that resonate deeply, those places that fuel our creativity.
And while the Neomin is Alex's muse, for Slava, it's like this lifelong companion. His village, Liadki, sits right on the riverbank. He's been exploring it since he was a kid.
It's fascinating how those early experiences shape our perception, how they influence the way we see and capture the world around us. But even a familiar friend like the Neomin can have its perilous moments. Slava actually lost his drone in its freezing waters once.
Knowing Slava, that's not going to stop him.
Of course not. He braved the icy water, retrieved the drone, and get this, managed to dry it out using a sauna and some alcohol. Talk about resourceful.
That's dedication. But we can't forget about the Sula River, another tributary of the Neoman. This is where Alex gets some of his most stunning footage. The sun breaking through the morning fog, illuminating the landscape.
Absolutely classic Belarusian scenery. They even shared a story about setting up a picnic table on the riverbank there under a pear tree, enjoying the view. A little slice of paradise.
Sounds idyllic. Although, knowing these two, I'm sure there's a less glamorous side to the story, too.
Well, Slava did mention spending a night there and waking up covered in ticks, so, there's that.
Always an adventure. But we have to hear more about Liadki, this village where Slava grew up. What kind of photographic opportunities does a photographer find in a place he knows like the back of his hand?
Well, for one, it's a chance for Alex to see Belarus through Slava's eyes. They talk about roasting potatoes in Slava's grandmother's oven, enjoying that slower pace of life.
But I'm sensing another mishap here.
You know it. This time it happened in Slava's grandmother's cellar. They're down there filming, and suddenly, Alex passes out.
No. What happened?
Lack of oxygen, apparently.
Yeah.
They even caught it on video. They joke that it looks like they're down there stealing potatoes in the dead of night.
Only these two. But just outside Liadki lies Naliboki Forest, calling them back to the wild. And this wouldn't be a proper adventure without a near miss, right?
Right on cue. They were hoping to capture some deer, but Slava's impatience got the better of him. They left just moments before the deer emerged. A valuable lesson, perhaps, in the virtues of patience.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
But their deer encounters don't end there. Tell me about the rapeseed field. That sounds magical.
It really does. Picture this. A misty dawn, golden light filtering through the trees, and suddenly they're surrounded by deer. Dozens of them emerging from the forest, totally unfazed by Slava and Alex.
That's the dream right there. Those moments of pure magic that make all the long waits and early mornings worth it.
Absolutely. But this idyllic scene takes a bit of a turn. They have a rather intense encounter with wolves in the fog.
We're kidding.
Nope, they were actually tracking deer when they spotted the wolf. Slava, being Slava, kept shooting photos, managed to capture some incredibly rare shots.
I don't think I could have kept the camera steady with a wolf staring me down.
Yeah.
But it's that dedication that makes him so good. Speaking of dedication, remember that wild boar in Osupovici? They thought it was a bison at first. That's how large this thing was.
It was a close call, that's for sure. But thankfully, Alex stayed calm. He knew panicking would only make things worse. So he stood his ground, observed the boar, and thankfully managed to avoid a confrontation.
It's a good reminder that as thrilling as those close encounters are, respecting the animals and their space is paramount. But I do appreciate that in addition to those adrenaline-pumping moments, they also share the more practical side of their craft. like the importance of having the right gear.
Oh, absolutely. Swamp boots, for one, are non-negotiable when you're navigating Belarusian landscapes.
And old maps. They talked about using old maps to find hidden locations. Slava mentioned discovering abandoned villages in Naliboki Forest just by comparing modern maps to ones from decades ago.
It's like piecing together a puzzle, using those old maps to guide their explorations.
And talk about finding a hidden gem. But even the best gear and most intriguing maps can't always prevent a mishap. Enter Slava and his rather complicated relationship with the Izlach River.
This river and his drones, it's almost comical. He lost one in the freezing water again, and then, as if to add insult to injury, had another one become hopelessly entangled in a tree.
You'd think he'd just stay away at this point.
Right. But no, it's like a challenge, and thankfully, his persistence paid off. He got both drones back, and the photos he's captured of the Izlach are truly stunning.
Sometimes a little perseverance and maybe a spare drone or two goes a long way. Speaking of stunning, we have to talk about those photos of the deer migration across the frozen lake near Kliasichets. Slava just nails those grand, sweeping landscapes.
He really does. And then you have Alex taking a completely different approach, capturing these intimate portraits of the deer as they wander past.
There's that story about the deer approaching him while he was filming the sunset, right?
He basically became the subject of a deer photo shoot. A good reminder that sometimes the best shots happen when you least expect them. But Kliasichit wasn't just about the deer. They also set up their cameras for a time-lapse of the Perseids meteor shower.
Now, those photos are something else. The Milky Way, the shooting stars, it's like looking into another dimension.
It's a good reminder to look up every once in a while, to remember there's this whole universe out there just beyond what we can see.
And we're back with Slava and Alex. As we rejoin them on this photographic journey, I noticed a subtle shift in their work. It's like they're not just capturing a beautiful scene anymore, it's more about how humans interact with these landscapes, the good, the bad.
Makes sense, right? I mean, it's one thing to appreciate nature's beauty. It's another to understand how we as humans fit into that picture, especially in Belarus, where there's this deep connection between the people and the land.
It's like their photography evolves to reflect that connection. And there's this moment in the interview regarding the Druch River where it really hit me. Slava sees a photo, this man standing on a rock in the middle of the river, mist swirling all around him. And he says, that could have been you and I.
It's almost like they see themselves in those landscapes. They've been those lone figures, braving the elements to get the shot.
It's that dedication, that connection that really comes through in their photos. And speaking of connection, we have to talk about Alex and his fascination with those ancient maples near Turna Velikaja. He was completely blown away by those trees.
Totally. He was talking about their sheer size, their age, the way the light played across their branches. You could tell it was a really powerful experience for him. Even being under the weather didn't stop him from capturing those images.
That says a lot, right?
Yeah.
That even when we're not at our best, nature has this power to draw us in, to inspire us. But all right, from ancient trees, let's shift gears to something a little more, shall we say, high energy. Because it turns out Slava has a bit of a daredevil streak in him. The man's a flood chaser.
Right. He keeps this close eye on the Pripyat River, waiting for it to overflow its banks. He's even using satellite imagery now to track the water levels.
He's like a storm chaser, but for floods. And of course, where Slava goes, Alex follows. They're out there capturing those incredible scenes, the flooded forests, the reflections, the eerie beauty of it all.
They even talked about a specific stretch of the Pripyat that's open to the public, unlike some areas further north in the Pripyat National Park.
Which is a good reminder, I think, that access to nature isn't always a given.
It's true, unfortunately. But even with those limitations, there's always something to appreciate if you know where to look.
Case in point, those incredible shots of whooper swans in the flooded fields.
Oh, those are gorgeous. And fun fact, those were taken on their birthday trip. They actually share the same birthday.
No way. That's amazing. Only fitting that these two photography soulmates would find themselves drawn to such a vibrant scene. But as captivating as the swans are, it was the cucumber greenhouses near Pinsk that really stole the show, right?
Right. I mean, who knew Belarus was such a cucumber powerhouse? Miles and miles of greenhouses, heated by firewood, producing cucumbers year-round. It's not exactly the image that comes to mind when you think of Belarus, but there it is.
It speaks to that adaptability, that resourcefulness you often find in rural communities. But it's funny, for all the amazing things they did capture, they never actually photographed those migrating birds near Terai.
It's true. Slava just came right out and said, I don't like birds.
I love that. It's so refreshing, They're not afraid to admit what doesn't interest them, even if it's considered a photographer's dream.
It's a good reminder to stay true to your own vision. Shoot what you love, not what you think you should be shooting.
Absolutely. But all right, before we wrap things up, we have to revisit the Minsk Sea, this time in its summer glory. Slava's aerial photos capture a completely different side to it. Boats dotting the water, families picnicking on the shore. It's almost like a different place.
It's a testament to how dramatically the seasons can transform a landscape. Alex even compared the summer colors of the Minsk Sea to a golf course, that intensely green water.
He's always finding the humor in things. But even amidst the summer fun, there are those subtle reminders of how humans impact these spaces.
Like that photo of the triathlon, with the swimmers making their way across the reservoir.
Right, it's like this reminder that our relationship with nature is complex. But speaking of complex, we can't forget about Alex's final winter masterpiece. Those photos of the frost-covered forests near the Minsk Sea are just otherworldly.
The way he describes it, it's like this magical phenomenon, this frost appearing out of nowhere as evening fell, coating the trees in a thick layer of ice crystals. A fitting end to this photographic journey, I think.
It really is. So what can we take away from all of this? From exploring Belarus through the eyes of Slava and Alex? For me, it's that beauty can be found anywhere if you just know where to look.
It's about slowing down, paying attention, and embracing those moments of awe, no matter how grand or how fleeting they may be.
Slava and Alex, they've shown us that exploration isn't just about the destination, it's about the journey, the connections we forge, the stories we tell.
And who knows, maybe their story will inspire you to pick up a camera or grab your hiking boots and discover the hidden gems in your own backyard.
That's it for this deep dive, folks. Thanks for joining us.